Aisha had no reason to be afraid. She believed she was meeting two people she trusted, people who had promised to care for her, to stand by her as she prepared to welcome a child into the world. But trust can be deadly when placed in the wrong hands. On a quiet Ramadan night, away from the crowded streets and the warmth of family gatherings, Aisha's future was stolen from her in the most unimaginable way. Her body was found in a secluded field, burned beyond recognition. Investigators didn't take long to uncover the shocking truth. She wasn't the victim of some random crime. The people responsible were the very ones she had confided in, her lover and his wife. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about keeping a secret hidden at any cost. Aisha had been involved in a relationship that was never meant to exist. She thought she had found love, but to them, she had become a problem, and problems had to be dealt with. The details of this case are disturbing, not because of the act itself, but because of the deception behind it. Aisha had no idea she was walking into a trap. No one knew that the very people she spent time with, shared meals with, and trusted with her deepest emotions had already decided how her story would end. Over the next hour, we will uncover the chilling details of how a relationship built on secrecy ended in the worst way possible. We'll take you through the investigation, the shocking confessions, and the lies that fell apart one by one. This is the story of Aisha, a woman whose only mistake was believing in love. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. Now let's begin. Aisha was 24 years old, full of hope for the future. She was deeply religious, observing her faith with devotion, yet she longed for companionship in a world that often felt isolating. Life had not always been easy, but she believed that love, true love, would bring her happiness. When she met Kareem, everything seemed to fall into place. He was kind, attentive, and unlike anyone she had ever known. But there was one complication. Kareem was married. His wife, Layla, was just as involved in his life as Aisha hoped to be. At first, the idea of being with a married man was unthinkable, but Kareem made it seem different. He told Aisha that love was not meant to be limited, that relationships could exist outside the expectations of society. Slowly, he introduced her to Layla, and what should have been an impossible situation began to feel like something beautiful. Aisha had always believed in loyalty, in the sanctity of marriage, but Kareem and Layla convinced her that this was something special. They weren't just a couple. They were opening their hearts to her, making her feel wanted, accepted, and cherished in a way she never had before. In the beginning, it was exciting. The secrecy, the stolen moments, the whispered promises. It felt like love in its purest form. Aisha found herself drawn deeper into their world, believing she had found something rare, something worth fighting for. But love should never come with conditions. And soon, Aisha would realize that what she thought was love was something else entirely. Aisha was not as powerless as Kareem and Layla believed. She had been silent for too long, but she had been watching, learning, and preparing for the moment they would turn on her. She knew Kareem's fear of exposure was greater than his love, and she knew Layla's loyalty would always be to her husband, no matter how much she once claimed to care for her. But what Kareem and Layla didn't know was that Aisha had already taken precautions. She had reached out to someone unexpected, her cousin, Samir. He was a figure neither Kareem nor Layla had ever met, a man who had always been protective of her but had stayed distant from her personal choices. Aisha had told him only part of the truth, that she was in a relationship with a married man who was now trying to abandon her and her unborn child. She left out the throuple detail, knowing it would only complicate things. Samir, however, was not the type to sit back and do nothing. On the night Aisha planned to publicly expose Kareem, she received a message that changed everything. It wasn't from Samir or her close friend. It was from an unknown number. "Stop now, or you won't live to regret it." Aisha's blood ran cold. Someone else knew. Was it Kareem, Layla, or someone even closer to them? She immediately called Samir, but before she could say much, he told her something that shook her to the core. He had already confronted Kareem. Samir had gone to Kareem's workplace earlier that day, demanding answers, threatening to expose him for abandoning Aisha. But Kareem had been calm, too calm. He had simply smiled and said, "You don't understand the full story." Samir left, but now Aisha knew Kareem and Layla were not just reacting to her threats. They were already ahead of her, and she had no idea what they had planned. At first, Aisha believed she had found something rare, something built on trust, honesty, and acceptance. Kareem and Layla welcomed her into their lives, making her feel like she belonged. She had no reason to question their intentions. In their words, this was not just a relationship. It was a bond built on love and understanding. But what Aisha didn't know was that her place in their world had limits. Kareem was respected in his community, known for his devotion and the image he carefully maintained. Layla came from a well-regarded family, one that valued tradition and status. Their life together was built on a foundation of appearances, one they could not afford to shatter. Aisha's presence in their lives had been manageable when she was just a secret. But when she became pregnant, everything changed. For Aisha, the news was joyful. She imagined a future where they would come together as a family, where her child would be loved and accepted. But Kareem's reaction was far from what she expected. He wasn't just distant, he was afraid. A child meant exposure. It meant questions. It meant consequences that went beyond personal shame. His family would never accept a relationship that had never been officially recognized, and his position in the community would be at risk. Layla, too, saw the pregnancy as a threat. She had agreed to Aisha's presence in their lives under one condition, that it would never complicate the balance of their marriage. And now, everything was complicated. Aisha soon realized that the love she believed in had been built on conditions, ones she had unknowingly broken. She thought they would eventually accept the child. She thought she could convince them that love was enough, but she had underestimated the lengths people would go to in order to protect their reputations. To Kareem and Layla, Aisha was no longer just a woman they once cared for. She was a risk, and risks had to be eliminated. Aisha was not one to be cast aside. She had sacrificed too much, believed too deeply, and now she was carrying a life that deserved love and recognition. She refused to accept that she and her child were nothing more than a mistake Kareem and Layla wanted to erase. She pleaded with Kareem to do the right thing, to acknowledge their child and take responsibility. But each conversation ended the same way. Kareem's excuses became more desperate, his patience wearing thin. Layla, once warm and understanding, was now cold and detached. The woman who had once embraced her like a sister now barely spoke a word. Aisha knew she couldn't wait for them to change their minds. She had to take control of her own fate. And so, she made a decision that sent panic through Kareem and Layla's carefully built world. She threatened to expose the truth. She knew the power of her voice. If she spoke out, their secret would no longer be theirs to control. Their families, their community, their standing, everything they had worked to protect would come crashing down. Kareem begged her to reconsider. He told her she was acting impulsively, that she didn't understand what was at stake. But Aisha had spent too long listening to his promises. This time she wouldn't be swayed. She warned them, if they did not acknowledge their child, she would tell everyone the truth. For Kareem and Layla, this was the moment they had feared the most. Aisha was no longer just a complication. She was a threat, and threats had to be dealt with. Aisha's mind raced. The message, Samir's confrontation, Kareem's eerie calmness. It all pointed to one terrifying truth. Kareem and Layla were no longer just trying to silence her with words. They had already decided she was a problem that needed to be erased. She had to leave. That night, Aisha packed a small bag. She planned to go somewhere Kareem and Layla wouldn't think to look. Samir's house. She knew she couldn't stay in the city. Too many people knew her connection to Kareem. If she disappeared, they would assume she ran away. And that's exactly what she needed. For now. But before she could leave, there was a knock at her door. Her heart pounded. She checked the time, just past midnight. No one should be visiting at this hour. Then, a voice. Soft, familiar. Layla. Aisha, please. I just want to talk. Aisha hesitated. Every part of her screamed to stay silent, to pretend she wasn't home. But she knew Layla. The woman wasn't reckless. If she was here alone, it meant something had changed. Aisha opened the door just a crack. Layla stood there, eyes red, looking over her shoulder as if she were afraid someone was watching. She stepped inside quickly, locking the door behind her. Kareem knows what you're planning, she whispered. You need to leave. Now. Aisha's breath caught. I was already leaving. Layla grabbed her wrist. Not like this. If you run, they'll find you. Aisha stared at her. They? Layla's silence was the only answer she needed. There were more people involved. And now, she didn't just have Kareem to fear. There were others in the shadows, people she didn't even know who had decided her fate. Aisha wasn't running from just a betrayal anymore. She was running from something much worse. The door creaked open and Aisha's breath hitched. She braced herself for Kareem, or worse, someone she didn't recognize. But when the figure stepped inside, her world cracked apart. Samir. Her cousin, the only person she thought she could trust, was standing in the doorway. But something was wrong. His face was blank, his hands clenched at his sides, and behind him, Kareem. Aisha's chest tightened. Samir? He didn't answer. He didn't even meet her eyes. Kareem stepped forward, calm as ever. You made this harder than it needed to be. Layla shrank against the wall, silent. She had known. That's why she had come. Not to help Aisha escape, but to deliver her right into Kareem's hands. Aisha's mind spun. She had planned for everything, except this. Samir had confronted Kareem, had threatened to expose him. So why was he standing here now, shoulder to shoulder with the man who had been ready to destroy her? Then, it clicked. Samir had never been on her side. He had gone to Kareem not to protect her, but to negotiate, to make sure her secret never tainted the family's honor. She had been a problem to Kareem, but to Samir, she had been a disgrace. Aisha's stomach turned. You promised to help me. Samir finally looked at her. His face was cold. This is helping. The walls felt like they were closing in. There was no more running, no more escaping. The people she had trusted had made their choice, and now she was trapped. Aisha's body tensed as she scanned the room, searching for anything, anyone, that could stop what was about to happen. Kareem blocked the door, his posture calm, controlled. Layla stood to the side, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, avoiding Aisha's eyes. Samir, the one person she had trusted, remained silent. His presence in that room was an answer in itself. She tried to reason with them, her voice firm despite the fear pressing against her chest. Every word was measured, a last attempt to break through to them. She reminded them of the people who knew about her, the questions that would be asked, the suspicions that would grow if she suddenly disappeared. For a moment, something shifted. Layla's shoulders stiffened. Samir's expression darkened with hesitation, but Kareem remained steady, his decision already made. His response was quiet but absolute. There was no turning back. The realization hit Aisha like a blow to the chest. There would be no more reasoning, no more bargaining. She had walked into a trap, and there was only one way out. Her eyes flicked toward the window. The night beyond was dark, but it was freedom. Her heart pounded as she took one last look at the people who had once promised her love and protection. Then, she ran. Aisha's feet pounded against the floor as she lunged toward the window. The cool night air was just within reach, an escape from the nightmare closing in around her. But before she could pull herself through, a force yanked her back, sending her crashing to the ground. Pain jolted through her body as she gasped for breath. Kareem towered over her, his face unreadable. Layla stood frozen, her hands trembling, while Samir hesitated for a brief second before stepping forward. Any hope that he might help her disappeared the moment he grabbed her arm. Aisha struggled, her voice breaking with desperation. She fought against their grip, against the weight of betrayal pressing down on her, but it was useless. There were three of them, and she was alone. She had always been alone. The cold night vanished as she was dragged outside. The smell of gasoline filled the air, thick and suffocating. Panic set in as she realized what was about to happen. She tried to plead, tried to scream, but the words barely left her lips before the first match was struck. In the distance, the city remained unaware. People continued their Ramadan prayers, families gathered for their nightly meals, and the world moved on, unaware that a secret was being buried in the flames. The call came just before sunrise. A farmer, walking along the edge of his field, had noticed something unusual. The ground was scorched black, the smell of burned fabric and something else, something unnatural still clinging to the air. At first, he thought it was remnants of a bonfire, maybe someone trying to get rid of trash. But then, something glinted under the rising sun. A bracelet, twisted and warped by heat, barely recognizable but still intact. It was delicate, the kind of jewelry someone would wear every day without thinking twice. And next to it, something far worse, fragments of bone, small and brittle, buried beneath the ash. The authorities arrived quickly. Crime scene investigators combed through the scorched remains, collecting every piece of evidence, every clue that could tell the story of what had happened here. It didn't take long to confirm the worst fears. The remains belonged to Aisha. What they found next made it clear. This wasn't just about getting rid of evidence. Someone had made sure she would never be found, never be given a proper burial, never have a voice again. But even fire couldn't erase everything. News of the discovery spread like wildfire. Aisha's name was on every news channel, every social media feed. A young woman expecting her first child, betrayed in the most unimaginable way. People were horrified, angry, demanding justice. Investigators wasted no time. Kareem was arrested first. When officers showed up at his home, he barely reacted. He didn't ask why they were there. He didn't fight or protest. It was as if he had been waiting for this moment, knowing it was inevitable. His silence spoke louder than any words ever could. Layla was next. She sobbed when they took her in, shaking as they led her out of the house. But was it guilt or fear? She had known what was coming too. And then there was Samir, the cousin who had once been like a brother to Aisha, the one she had trusted. His arrest was the final confirmation of the betrayal that had led to her final moments. The trial became a media sensation. Every painful detail was laid bare for the world to see. The secret relationship, the growing tensions, the fear that Aisha would expose them, the desperate, cruel decision to make sure she never did. And then came the verdict. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the sentences. The weight of justice fell upon Kareem, Layla, and Samir. But did it really feel like enough? Aisha was gone. The child she never got to hold was gone. Her family wept. Strangers mourned for a woman they had never met but felt connected to. Her name became a symbol, not just of loss, but of something much larger, a painful truth about love, betrayal, and the lengths some people would go to in order to protect their secrets. Aisha trusted the wrong people. She believed in love, in promises, in the idea that she had a place in their world, and for that, she was silenced in the most horrifying way. But what does justice mean in a case like this? Does a prison sentence make up for the life stolen from her? For the dreams that burned with her that night? And the most haunting question of all, how many other stories like hers exist? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more true crime stories.